We are live.
Hello, Soti everyone. We will now begin our online weekly Dhamma group. The Sirimangala community, where Venerable Yuttadhammo is joining us from Sri Lanka. We are currently studying the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta commentary by the late Mahasi Sayadaw. But before we begin, we will begin by taking the 5 precepts together. This is something that we do before every session. The precepts provide a foundation for us for mental clarity, allowing us to help guard our senses for a continuous practice of mindfulness. Helping us purify our mind through restraint by following the precepts. Is there anyone that's willing to lead the precepts today for us? If there's no one, I can do it myself.
Actually, I can do it if you like.
Yes, that's fine, Chichi.
Thank you.
Go ahead and begin whenever you're ready. Thank you so much.
I just can't see the precept yet on the screen. So is that me or?
Actually, I can't see any text either.
Okay, now I can see. Yes.
You should try to open it in your browser because I can't show the precepts on Discord.
Yeah, I'm seeing it on YouTube, so I have 2 screens.
Yeah, but it's delayed, so it will be difficult. It doesn't really work.
That's true. Yep. Should I wait for the text on the Discord?
Chichi, do you have a way to view it on your device?
Unfortunately, I cannot see it on my Discord, so perhaps you might want to do it if you don't mind, because it might take longer at my end.
How about using the photo that Andrew just posted in the chat?
Why
yes.
aren't we showing them in Discord?
Actually, I could try to set it up. Although, Subitsu, are you able to do it? Because I can't operate the OBS otherwise.
Yes, give me one moment.
Sander actually posted it, so you could also use that if you need.
Chi, are you able to see it on the screen share I just posted? Didn't hear you, Chi Chi. Are you able to see it?
I can see it, but I cannot hear you on that channel. So I don't want to delay the time. Would you mind doing it, please? I don't mind to do it, but I may get into technical issues at my end. Thank you, Super Sue.
I can do it. No problem.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
Eddie, did you want to do it?
Yes, I'm doing.
Okay, go ahead, Eddie. Thank you so much.
Ahangante. Tisaranena saha pancha silani yachami. Dutiyampi ahangante. Tisaranena saha pancha silani yachami. Datyampi ahangante. Tisaranena saha pancha silani yachami.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Ang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Isarnagamanang nititang.
Bante.
Parnatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Pana pata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adinadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adinadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Kamesu miccācara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Kamesu chācara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Musāvāda veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Musawada Viramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Surameraya Majjapamadatthana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Sura Niraya Majja Vadhana Viramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Imani pancha sikkhapadani Silena sugating yanti Silena bhoga sampada Silena nibbutting yanti Tasma silang nisodhye.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you for that edit. We will now transition into our reading and continue our study of the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta commentary by the late Mahasi Sayadaw. We are currently at the PDF page number 141, which is the physical page 131 of the booklet. So we're going to be starting off at the paragraph where it says, quote unquote, Venerable Sir, in what way will it be possible to avoid? Starting at the line right before that, on reaching the presence of the Blessed One. You want to be reading 2 paragraphs each. I have a reading list in the text chat that we can see the reading order. Just remember to leave a small gap or space after each paragraph in case there are questions or some kind of discussion wants to be talked about regarding the topic in that paragraph. So the last user was, or the last reader of last week was Sanda. So this week we'll start off with Susan. Susan, can you start us off today, please, in our reading?
Yes. On reaching the presence of the Blessed One, he addressed him, Venerable Sir, in what way will it be possible to avoid and proceed past the Nandavana garden, otherwise known as the Mohana garden, the grove of stupidity, because it encourages foolish behavior in the celestial beings who visit it, where thousands of female celestial beings indulge in singing and yodeling, when numerous demons, goblins, and spirits haunt.
So as a bit of a recap, we're dipping in the story of Samana Deva. Samana means like a shaman. It's where the word shaman comes from in English, but it refers to those who have left the home life to go and live in the forest. And this was the word the Buddha used to describe not only his monks, sometimes to refer to his followers, his monastic followers, sometimes to refer just in general to those people in India at the time who left home for whatever reason to live whatever spiritual life. But this was a Buddhist monk, and he was practicing meditation, and he died, and he went to heaven, and he saw all these devas cavorting around and excited to see him in this great, magnificent heavenly palace. And he thought something. He thought this was people coming to visit the monastery, coming to his forest monastery to visit, and so he covered up his robes because there were women, there were female devas, probably not wearing many clothes themselves. And they tried to convince him that he wasn't a monk anymore, and they had to show him a mirror to make him realize that he had passed away and come to heaven. And they were trying to encourage him to be excited and to be happy and rejoice with them in the fact that he had done a very incredible thing, a very difficult thing, to be born in heaven. And he was horrified and went to see the Buddha. Immediately left heaven, went to earth, and went to see the Buddha. And he didn't have anything good to say about. He didn't have much good to say about the place that he had found himself reborn in. So he renamed it. Instead of the Nandavana Grove, he called it the Mohana Grove, which means grove of delusion. Not quite stupidity, but more like delusion. And he called the devas there goblins and demons.
Here, the deva refer to the celestial females as demons and goblins, and to the Nandavana glads as the growth of stupidity, because he was still in a repulsive mood towards sensual pleasures as a consequence of his intense efforts at insight meditation. The commentary explanation of the Deva's query as to how to proceed along was that he was requesting the Blessed One for guidance on insight, which provides access to Arahantship.
So the Deva's actual words, we could go find them in the Tipitaka. He doesn't actually quote them here, as far as I can see. He quotes the Buddha's answer. But the thing that you have that is kind of worth noting is that it would have been a very cryptic sort of question, and that's why he brings up the commentary, because he isn't quoting it here. This quote that he gives it's an elaboration on what he actually said. He probably said something, I've looked this up before, he said something like, what is the way? And I guess he mentions the Mohana garden, but he doesn't explain it. That's Mahasi Sayadaw's explanation of why he calls it the Mohana garden. But it would have been rather cryptic, and he would have just asked, what is the way? Or the way out, how to proceed. And the Buddha gives a fairly equally cryptic response that has to be explained as well. But this is the way Devas, angels, spoke, and it's the way the Buddha responded to them. It's kind of interesting to realize that they're not like humans. They have different sort of more exalted way of thinking and much more flowery language and rhetorical. Like they talk in metaphors and much more flowery and poetic language. But cryptic as well. Hard for humans to understand, because our brains, our fleshy bodies and our brains kind of dull our senses compared to the devas.
The Buddha reflected on all the circumstances concerning the Deva and taught him the Noble Eightfold Path in 3 verses. Ujuko nama so mago abaya nama sa disa rato aku jano nama Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. O Deva, who is anxious to flee away, the straight path for a quick escape is the eightfold path of insight you already trod while a bhikkhu.
Yeah, the next paragraph he's going to explain that this isn't quite the literal translation. It literally says, I can't quite make out the last part. I don't know the one word anyway. But straight indeed is that path. And the cryptic part is that he doesn't say, he doesn't explain what is that path that he's talking about. You have to understand, and the Deva would have understood it to mean that path that you were already on. But he doesn't actually say that. And the next part is Abhaya Nama Sadisa. That direction is indeed free from danger. Abhaya. So meaning the direction that that path leads to, heads towards. That way. Disa is one of the four directions, or it's a direction in general. Ratha is a path, or sorry, a cart. Akujana is the word I don't quite know. Oh, wait. I can just ask Google. What does Google say?
I have not creaking,
Akujana.
not rattling, not
Ah,
rumbling.
right. So it's a steady cart. Again, cryptic. You see, he doesn't talk about, he doesn't say what he actually means. He uses metaphors. So the cart was not rickety, not unstable, indeed, which is samyutta, and I think there's a spelling error here. Samyutta should have two T's, but that's not a big deal. It is tied to the Dhammacakka. So Dhammacakka is the name of the sutta, right? But chakka means wheel. Remember, there's the metaphor of this. The sutta is, the title is a metaphor. That the Buddha started teaching Dhamma is like setting a wheel in motion. And so he does something right clever here. He says that the cart is indeed not rickety or not unstable. That is tied, sangyutta, or connected with, and then it's plural, which is interesting, with wheels of Dhamma. So what are the wheels of Dhamma here? Could be the Four Noble Truths because it's plural, but basically tied to the Dhamma. So the cart that uses the Dhamma as its wheels is not unstable. I mean, it's a good cart to take on the path to go in that direction. Kind of a beautiful verse, but this is exemplary of the exemplary. It's a good example of the sort of verses that you have in the Deva Sangyutta and the Deva Buddha Sangyutta. These parts of the Buddha's teaching that are recorded conversations with Devas. Quite a beautiful part of the Tipitaka.
Go ahead and read one more paragraph. Here, we have given, for the benefit of the present audience, the explanatory meaning of the first line in the verse, which just says, "The straight path is that path." That bare translation would have been quite incomprehensible to this audience, but to the Dewa, who looked as if he had come straight from the monastery where he had devoted himself to meditation, the meaning was quite clear. The exposition of the commentary is as follows.
So here's the question. Achara gana sanggutang isacha gana sevitang wanantang mohanang nama tatang yatra bhavisati. Tatang yatra. How will one travel from it? Basically what he said. The forest, the deep forest of delusion. Wanantang mohanang. Deep forest of delusion. He's talking about heaven.
I'm giving meditation training to someone not yet established in morality, etc. The Blessed One always advised him, purify your moral conduct, develop mindfulness and concentration, straighten out your views on karma and its effects, and directed the meditators to get firmly established in these fundamental practices initially. To one already engaged in meditation, he instructed him only in insight and proximate cause to Arahantship. Deva was already practicing meditation, and his morality remained unimpaired. It was only the noble path that he needed to accomplish, having already developed its precursor, the preliminary path, Pubabhagamaga, and the path of insight, Vipassanamaga. Thus, in order to instruct him in insight, the Blessed One taught him the 3 verses.
Yeah, he is going to discuss the other verses. I see down below he's going to get into the second and then the third verse. That's good.
In this commentary exposition, the fact of his morality remaining unimpaired even after he had passed over from a bhikkhu's existence to that of a celestial being should be well noted. It meant that having not breached any of the precepts, such as killing, stealing, sexual relationships, etc., he continued to maintain his morality. It should be understood, therefore, that even without a formal vow of keeping the precepts, morality remains unimpaired if one abstains from evil deeds, which one should not commit. It should also be noted that these verses taught insight meditation.
As we had explained above, the best and straightest way of quick escape from the Nandavana garden of the celestial realm with its celestial nymphs is the path of insight, which he had practiced while he was a bhikkhu. Regarding the next query on the place of refuge free from danger, the Buddha said, "The place of refuge free from danger is the sanctuary of nibbana, which you aspired to as a bhikkhu." This meant that he had to strive on until he attained nibbana. I'll read one more paragraph. As to what type of vehicle should be employed to make the journey, the Blessed One said, "For a silent escape, with no one becoming aware of it, you need a silent carriage, which is the carriage fitted with the two wheels of physical and mental exertion."
The mental effort involved in noting every physical and mental activity is mental exertion, cetasika virya. When noting the bodily actions of going, standing, sitting, the physical effort required to maintain the body in respective posture is called physical exertion, kayika virya. Meditation while lying down involves only mental exertion, not physical exertion. Here, as the use of a carriage with wheels of mental and physical exertion was advised, it must be taken to mean insight meditation that requires mindful noting of walking, standing, and sitting. Thus derived the silent carriage of the path of insight fitted with the two wheels of physical and mental exertion. We must engage in mindful noting while walking and down. That is to say, we must note walking, lifting, stepping forward, dropping, as prescribed in the Satipatthana Sutta as Gacchanto va Gaccamiti Pajanati.
This should be a familiar phrase to many of you. Gacchanto va gaccamiti bhajanati. It's an example of the sort of language that Buddha uses in the very famous Satipatthana Sutta and Mahasatipatthana Sutta, the discourses on mindfulness, and elsewhere in the Satipatthana Samyutta and so on. Gacchanto, when going, gaccamiti. Gacchami means I am going. Bhajanati. Bhajanati is a verbal form of the word panya. Panya meaning to, the word we translate as wisdom, but it means to know in an exceptional way. So it can be used in different situations whenever you're talking about not just knowing, but knowing, really knowing, like fully knowing or perfectly knowing or strongly, assuredly knowing, like knowing 100% kind of thing. So it's why it's used to refer to wisdom as opposed to just intelligence. If you know something because you've heard it, because you've learned it in school, that's not wisdom. That's not bhajanati. But bhajanati is when you know it directly. And so this is why we teach students, and why Mahasi Sayadaw, starting with Mahasi Sayadaw and before Mahasi Sayadaw, we teach students to remind yourself, say to yourself, gacchami, or walking, walking. Because when you do that, there is the sure knowledge that you're walking, right? Meaning your mind is fixed on that experience. And there's other things that are not, and this is just an example or a simple way of describing the basic core of the practice, but it involves a lot of useful qualities. Because when you're saying to yourself, gacchami, not only do you know that you're walking, but you prevent yourself from extrapolating. It's not, I am walking well, I am walking poorly, I am walking and I hate it, I am walking and I like it, it's me walking, I am walking, that sort of thing. It prevents making anything of it. So there's just an awareness of the experience of walking. because, so this is a quality that's important of mindfulness, the quality of mindfulness that's essential and makes it an essential tool for the cultivation of wisdom, of panya. Because when you see it just as walking, you're with the actual reality of the experience. You're not distracted by concepts of me or mine or good or bad. You're directly with the experience. That's why bhajanati, because you can know it fully without any diversion. Just the experience, the reality, that what's really happening when you walk. It's not a profound thing, it's a very simple thing. But what's profound is that we're normally not with this very simple thing of walking. We're normally with so many other things, like the I and the good and the bad and the judgments, or we're somewhere else. We're walking, but our minds are in the future or the past or different places. It's a good verse to help start to explain to people why we note and what use it is to note, to use a mantra to remind yourself and to keep yourself fixed and focused on the actual experience.
While striving thus, as the concentration gets strengthened, the meditator will come to distinguish with each noting the matter which causes stiffness and moves from the mind, the mental act, noting it. As the concentration gets strengthened further, the meditator will come to distinguish the cause from the effect. He or she knows. Because of the intention to go, the physical process of going appears. Because there is the object to know, there is knowing. With further progress, the arising of each phenomenon for a moment, the intention to go, the physical process of going, the noting mind, followed by its dissolution, is clearly perceived as if it is grasped in one's own hand. It is then realized plainly that what arises momentarily, only to vanish immediately, is not permanent. That what arises and vanishes incessantly is dreadful suffering. The meditator will also comprehend clearly that the phenomena are occurring of their own accord, following nobody's will, and therefore are not subject to anyone's control. Then the mindful noting should continue while standing or sitting occasionally.
Yeah, so this is a good description of the beginning stages of an intensive meditation course. If you've any familiarity with intensive meditation courses, this process, what he's describing here, should be quite familiar. It's also a reference to the first few stages of vipassana, or the first few stages of knowledge. But important is not to keep this in mind while you're practicing. You shouldn't use this to think, okay, I'll memorize this paragraph or something like it, and I'll use it to practice somehow, or I'll use it to help my practice. It won't help your practice. It'll probably do the opposite. What this would be useful for is, after having practiced, two ways, I guess. After having practiced, it'd be useful to go back and to review and to appreciate what you've gone through. But the other way it's useful is, as it's being used here, for those of you who haven't done intensive practice, get an idea of why mindfulness works, how it works, and how it leads you to eventually let go. It's often not included in these sorts of descriptions is why you would want that. Why would you want that? Why would you want to experience dreadful suffering? Why would you want to see this? Even if it's true, why wouldn't you just forget about it? Go focus on concepts and illusions. So what is implied here, what is often goes without saying and can be missed by people who are not well versed in the subject matter, is that because we only cling to things when we think they're going to make us happy. All these things he's talking about as being impermanent, as being suffering, as being a non-self. He's basically describing the three characteristics at the end there. When we see them as being stable, satisfying, and controllable, we cling to them. That's the only basic reason why we cling to things. We could never cling to things, to anything, if we truly saw it as impermanent, unsatisfying, and uncontrollable. Because we see things as satisfying, or as stable, satisfying, and controllable, we cling to them. And the problem with clinging is that through mindfulness you start to see, oh, this is why I'm not satisfied. This is why I always need more and more and more. This is why my mind is never at peace and stable and still. This is why I'm always more and more and more, always reaching, always yearning. It's because they don't satisfy. They come and they go. And control them. They disappoint you when you don't get what you want. Sometimes in life you stress and worry about losing what you have and so on. All the things that we've talked about. So it's crucial, and it's of the utmost value to see these things for that very reason, because when you see them, you stop looking to them for happiness. It's not that you stop being happy, that you stop suffering, you stop stressing, you stop yearning, you stop needing, you stop being so needy and dependent on this or that. We're all dependent on things, right? We depend on this to make me happy. If this is here, I'm happy. And so we do whatever we can to just get it again and again and again. So our happiness is in things that are external, and we have to work for them. We have to strive for them. We have to worry about losing them. And in the end, we lose them all. We get old, we get sick, we die. It happens. So the point is that happiness, true happiness, only comes independent of things, independent of experiences. It's not about not experiencing, it's about not having your happiness depend on any one experience, so that you can be at peace and happy regardless. It's the only way.
The silent carriage mentioned here is a reference to the horse-drawn vehicles of ancient days. Some carriages are by themselves noiseless, but when burdened with many passengers or heavy loads, they are liable to produce a creaking sound. However, the path vehicle is able to carry an unlimited number of passengers without producing the sound. Sometimes, while listening to the teachings of the Buddha, passengers numbering 84,000 rode on this vehicle, piloted by the path of insight, which transported them noiselessly to their final destination of nibbana. Thus, this carriage was admired as a silent vehicle. Intimation was in this way given by the Buddha to the Deva that it would be possible to make his silent escape without letting the celestial nymphs know by means of his transport. And
I
the
guess
Pali
Pujana
is
is some kind of creaking.
the Pali verse is Hiri tassa apalambo satyasa varanang Dhammanang sarathing brumi samaditi purejavang. The sense of shame, hiri, and revulsion of avoid evil deeds serves as the leaning board on the seat of the carriage, without which passengers are liable to fall backwards when the carriage moves. The path vehicle has excellent leaning boards of shame, hiri, and dread, ottappa, of wrongdoing.
I think the word avoid is not supposed to be there. I think it's just the sense of shame and revulsion of evil deeds.
But what Appalambo, I was puzzled about.
It's a part of the
That's not.
carriage.
Oh, okay.
So it's the board that you lean, as he says, leaning board on the seats. So what you can lean against when you sit.
It confused me because usually when it's a word starts with a, it's like a negation of the thing, and yeah. Sorry, I confused myself.
Seems to be an ancient term from Vedas, from the Vedic. Mechanism to stop a chariot, a safeguard to prevent warriors from falling out. Leaning board probably isn't the translation, actually. This looks like a later translation, but looks like older is thing to stop you from falling out. Something on a chariot, anyway. But the idea is it protects you, I think is the point. Apalambu. It may have something to do with falling. Baleti. Bal is the root. Doesn't have any etymology here, but bal, the root bal, is in regards to falling. Well, bal is may have. I'm just guessing. May have something to do with not falling out. Is the idea a thing for not falling out?
Oh, it makes sense. I mean, I didn't know about Pala. I thought it's about Pala, but there is no H.
I may be wrong. I'm just gonna look it up.
The root in the dictionary
May
I
actually be
found,
wrong.
Bante, says lamb, and it's from hanging,
Mm.
but I'm not sure.
So it could be appa, right. Appa is could be the prefix. Appa is, I forget what it refers to. Maybe wrong about the whole falling thing.
No, that's actually the translation that I at least found. It's the same thing what you said, Bante.
No, but that's the root. The root. I don't think I'm right about the root bal or bal. Yeah, because bal is guarding, so it actually might have come from guarding. Think of what was the root to fall. Anyway, not really important. But the neat thing is that he's describing hiri as the thing that keeps you in the cart, right? Because if you don't have hiri, you fall out. You fall, as we say in English about people who are alcoholics, when they fall off the horse or they fall off the cart. I think that's how they say it, right?
Wagon.
Fall off the wagon, right? It's when they fall back into drinking alcohol.
The meditator feels repelled and horrified at the possible arising of unwholesome thoughts concerning some objects that may be missed while heedfully noting. It is like the revulsion that one feels towards coming into contact with filth after having a bath. The conscientious concern for the non-arising of unwholesome thoughts and revulsion towards them is shame, hiri. There is also the fear of unwholesome thoughts leading to evil actions that will yield unwholesome effects and hinder escape from the cycle of existences. This fear of evil deeds and its unwholesome consequences is called dread, ottappa. Due to this sense of shame and fear of evil deeds, a meditator is reverentially devoted to the task of noting every physical and mental phenomenon without missing any. Thus, the path is kept developing with each passing moment. This is likely the way in which the the leaning boats of the carriage prevent the passengers from falling backwards, maintaining them in their positions. That is why the Blessed One described shame and dread as the leaning boats of the carriage.
Bante, I have a question about this paragraph. Um, so I noticed that the emotions that they talk about are fear, shame, and dread. I was just wondering, what about regret? Does that also show up? Or why is there an emphasis on these three main emotions mainly?
Regret is aversion. Regret is a disliking.
Okay.
You did something, and when you have to think about what you did, there's a disliking of that thought. But the thing is, you can't avoid the thought. You can't avoid the memory of having done bad things. And so if you're not enlightened, you're going to suffer terribly from the regret. The regret is not a good thing. Regret is not valuable or useful. It's
Thank you.
just a consequence of having done bad things. These are just words. They're not actual fear. Fear is also a bad thing. Fear is also based on disliking. But we call it fear and we call it shame because we need words to describe wisdom or experience or just the presence of mind to see a bad deed as a bad deed and to recoil from it. Not that they're afraid of it, they just naturally recoil and shy away from doing it. They recoil from the deed, they recoil from the results of the deed. Meaning they recoil from the deed because of the result and because of the nature of the deed. So here he is recoiling based on the nature of the deed. Ottappa is recoiling based on the consequences, the nature of the consequences of the deed.
Thank you for clarifying. Then the Blessed One went on to explain how mindfulness is like the awning of the carriage. As the awning fitted to a carriage guards against stones or sticks being thrown in, mindfulness of every mental and physical phenomenon as it arises keeps oneself secure from the danger of demeritorious deeds. Therefore, the four foundations of mindfulness, such as the contemplation of the body, are called the awning of the carriage.
So yeah, these two work. It's a great way of describing the path or the practice. The hiri ottappa part is related to sila. It keeps you from falling out of the cart, falling off the wagon, getting drawn back into distraction, like the wrong path, going down the path of defilement and of unwholesomeness and so on. But then on the other hand, there are things that are going to make you want to leave, things that are going to come and dissuade you from the practice, the difficulties and the triggers for liking and disliking. And it's mindfulness that keeps you on the path, in the sense it keeps you protected on the path. So the carriage will break down if you don't have an awning, or if you don't have a cover for the carriage, because of the things that are impinging upon you. So in the same way, mindfulness is the guard, and the Buddha often again and again uses the word guard to describe the purpose or the function of mindfulness, because it stands at the doors of perception. It stands at the door to experience, on the boundary between our mind and our experiences, and it stands there and prevents the arising of defilement by experiencing the incoming experiences purely as they are. It allows the mind to have a clear, unfettered view of experience. So it's the guard that allows wisdom to grow. So, and that's what he's going to say next, is that wisdom is the driver. Wisdom is the thing that's leading us forward. Without mindfulness, you can't go forward. You won't be able to see clearly, because you're bombarded with and polluted by the incoming defilements.
The Blessed One continued, I call right view of the noble path, preceded by the right view of insight, the driver of the carriage.
Of the six kinds of right views, right view about ownership of karma, right view of absorption, right view of insight, right view of the path, right view of the fruit, and right view of reviewing. Right view of the fruit is the result of the path. Similarly, right view of reviewing is the reflective knowledge that appears after attaining the path and its fruition. Therefore, it needs no particular effort to develop them. The right view concerning karma and its effects has to be established even before one starts the practice of meditation. The right view concerning absorption is related to the purification of mind, which is the basis for insight. Thus, the proximate knowledge that has to be developed for the promotion of right view of the path is the right view of insight. When insight knowledge is fully developed, the knowledge of the path, i.e. the right view of the path, arises spontaneously. It is just like a royal procession coming along after the road have been cleared by the police and military escorts. Therefore, it is said that the right view of insight proceeds first, followed by the noble right view. While engaged in insight meditation, insight knowledge leads the way for the development of the other path factors. At the moment of attaining the noble path knowledge gives the lead to the other path factors. For this reason, the Buddha called the right view of insight and the right view of the noble path the drivers of the carriage. The last verse runs as follows.
Thank you, Michaels. We can stop our reading there for today, as we've hit the first hour. So now I'll give some time for any questions that anyone has. If they would like to share or discuss something related to the text, feel free to do so.
And may I please ask a question? In the reading, we mentioned and we talked about Arahantship and nibbana. It's talking to the Lord Buddha was talking to the monk who became diva. I think I'll re-ask this question. Could you please explain one more time the difference between Arahantship and nibbana? Thank you.
So nibbana refers to the event of unbinding. So basically, our ordinary state is to seek out experience. Mind is always seeking out, because it feels like there is reason to do so, that there is happiness, there's satisfaction that comes from it. When a meditator pays close attention to experience enough so that they see clearly the three characteristics, if they see it clear enough, it will trigger this process of unbinding, whereby there is a cessation and no more seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, thinking. So nibbana is basically a name for that event, that process. It's also, you could say it's a name for the state one achieves as a result of the process. Arahant refers to, it's a conceptual idea of referring to a type of being, or it's referring to the moment of that experience. So that experience can be the experience of what we call sotapanna. And by that we mean that which changes the course for further experiences, from that of worldly pursuits to that of noble pursuits. Sotapanna means has attained this stream. So the first time one has this experience, this process, when one goes through this process, has this experience, the first time after that one is called a sotapanna, because the Buddha said they are sure, having seen it once, they are sure to eventually see it again and again until they finally cleanse their mind, purify their minds completely. They're purified from several defilements like wrong view, doubt, and attachment to practices that are not the path. But if they have that experience again and again, they start to cleanse the mind of greed, of anger, of delusion, until eventually there's no more greed, no more anger, no more delusion, means no more potential for the arising of any of those. Their minds are so pure that it's just impossible for ever greed, anger, or delusion to arise. So greed is simple. Well, greed is greed for sensuality, but it's also eventually greed for becoming, greed for non-becoming. Uh, anger is related to non-becoming as well. And delusion is, well, it's firstly wrong view, which you do away in the beginning, with in the beginning, but it's also conceit and even just distraction of the mind that is busy, right? The busy mind, or mind that is worried, worry as a hindrance. When the mind gets free from all of those, or free from the potential for the arising of even worry, even conceit, then one is an arahant. Or you can say, when one has that experience, so there's two ways. The conceptual way, you can say this person is an arahant, but you can also, if you want to be technical, say that experience, at that point, when one has the cessation experience, the experience of nibbana, that experience is the experience of arahantship, or it's arahata magga, arahata pala, the path of arahata and the fruit of arahata. This is because the being doesn't actually exist, so you can't say an arahant actually exists. You just conventionally say this person is an arahant, that person is an arahant. But the reality is that experience is the only thing that is arahant. It is the experience of nibbana. But speaking of the person who we colloquially or conventionally call an arahant, again, they have no potential throughout their life for the arising of greed, anger, and delusion, and very easily, anytime they apply themselves to paying attention to experiences, again, they will see the three characteristics, and quite quickly they will enter into the state of nibbana. But when they pass away, there is no more rebirth. That person, the nature of an arahant is so that when they die, the process of the mind ceases. So there's no more rebirth. Which reminds us that this is not a simple path. It's not even an appealing path for most people. We talked about before that some people don't want to be born again, but it can also be just this fear or aversion to suffering. And Arahant doesn't have that. They're just tired. They're just completely disinterested in being reborn again. Most people, when they hear about this kind of thing, they're horrified by the idea of not ever having the ability to experience pleasure or enjoyable things again. So it's not easy to appreciate the attainment of arahantship. Buddhism is not something that ordinary people are at all interested in. Not something that you can present to the masses and have them say, "Oh, wow, this is great." But the basics of it really are and should be appealing, because they provide a reason to be a good person, an encouragement to be a good person. They provide reasons to not be an evil person. Normally, religions appeal to God for this, right? The only way you can rationalize being a good person is God. God said, "Don't do this." Oh, well, in that case, that's a good reason. They say that would be a good reason if there was a God who was going to punish you for not doing for doing things you weren't supposed to, and so on. If that were true, that would be a pretty good reason. It's not the best reason, and it's not even a good reason because it's not true. But the best reason is because it, of course, causes suffering. What Buddhism provides is a better reason to not be a bad person and to be a good person, and provides a gradual path. The Buddha described it as a gradual teaching, because if you just talk about the result and the goal, it's very difficult for people to deeply appreciate that. But if you talk about it in terms that ordinary people can understand, they can gradually come to a place where they're able to appreciate, yes, letting go of samsara, just even see that as a good thing.
Thank you very much, Bante.
If there are no more other questions from the community for now, I will slowly start with the YouTube questions, but also some from the Discord chat. But if you do have questions with your microphone, then you're allowed to just turn it on. And don't hesitate to just jump in, even if your question is related to the current question on screen, or if you have something to add, you're welcome to do that. Okay, Bante, the first question. Can I practice sitting mindfulness of seeing, eyes open? Can you offer any guidance as to this type of mindfulness and how you have done this, if you have?
We practice sitting with the eyes closed. Seeing is problematic because it's so quick. There's so many things that you see and you're quick to identify them. You can be mindful of it, but formal meditation practice is meant to be a laboratory sort of setting where you start from very simple premises or simple observations, simple techniques, and eventually are able to apply them in a more natural environment. I mean, it helps you to apply mindfulness more naturally throughout your life. But formal meditation is kind of it's purposefully limiting and isolating our experiences to allow us to better see them, so better experience them. So with your eyes closed is definitely preferable. But there's nothing complicated about what you're describing. If you see something, you just say seeing. Say to yourself, seeing, that's it. Simple.
The next question is, should I meditate when I go to bed at night and when I'm trying to sleep? Or is it necessary to be awake at all times during mindfulness?
You can't be mindful when you're not awake. That part is clear. But the key to your question, what you really should do if you're dedicated, like if you want an answer for a Buddhist meditator, you should never try to sleep. Trying to sleep is the problem. Not a problem, but it's a mistake. You shouldn't try to stay awake necessarily, because that's not a great approach. If you're sitting trying to keep yourself awake, what are you doing? You're actually just stressing yourself. You're purposefully creating stress or whatever, I don't know, and trying to control. You're creating this delusion that I'm going to stay awake, I'm going to control, and it doesn't really work, nor is it a good approach. It's not a good perspective. But the perspective of mindfulness, that's what you should be trying to. You should never try to sleep. You should try to be mindful. Or maybe that's not even quite accurate. You shouldn't try to be mindful. You should just be mindful. In other words, you should use the word, remind yourself. If you feel tired, you can just say tired. Tired. If you're lying, you can say lying. If the stomach rises, you can say rising, falling. And don't ever try to go to sleep. I mean, in the same way as trying to stay awake, trying to go to sleep is also stressful. It often makes it harder to sleep. It really does. The reason why people are insomniacs and stressed about sleeping and worried about how much they're sleeping is because they're fixated on trying to go to sleep. It's not restful. Trying to go to sleep doesn't make you more relaxed. Mindfulness does a much better job. It's actually pretty easy to go to sleep when you're mindful. But even if you don't fall asleep, sometimes you don't. I mean, it's entirely up to your body when it's going to go to sleep. Sometimes you might have to be mindful for a long time before you actually go to sleep, and that's fine. When you stop trying to go to sleep, you're much more rested and much more relaxed. And of course, much more clear and pure of mind. That's the best way. If you want to go to sleep, you should not say wanting. If you're afraid or worried about not going to sleep, you should say worried. If you doubt whether you should be doing this, say doubting.
The next question is, smartphones and social media can drive people to distraction. Should they be treated similar to intoxicants, as they can be addictive and divert us from the Dhamma?
No, anything can be addictive and divert you from the Dhamma. That's not what the intoxicants' role is. Intoxicants make it impossible to be mindful. Things that divert you and distract you, well, they don't, in general, prevent you from being mindful. Obviously, you can be scrolling through your phone and still be mindful. Normally, we don't, but you can. This is a good practice to get used to. Try and be mindful of the movements of your fingers. Be mindful of seeing your phone. It will wake you up, change your perspective. But when you're on drugs or alcohol, you can't do that. Noting isn't going to wake you up. Your mind is filtered. The brain is a filter for the mind. And when your brain is poisoned, your mind can't function very well. So they should certainly be treated with the danger that they pose, but they're not on the level of intoxicants. Otherwise, we would say that the seventh precept is just the fifth precept, because it's entertainment and dancing and singing and all these things that divert the mind and encourage craving. Or we could say the third precept is also the fifth precept. No, the fifth precept is specific and special and of its own kind.
The next question, Bante. Is there any available series or list that categorizes thoughts and emotions, which could help to recognize and accept such thoughts and emotions while meditating?
Is there what again? Which could help to recognize and accept. So a list won't help you recognize your experiences. Recognition is an important quality that we try to develop. It's an aspect of mindfulness, or it's a part of the process of the arising of mindfulness. So if you're not good at recognizing your experiences, well, that's one of the skills you want to gain. But the word accepting isn't a part of mindfulness. We're not trying to accept things. We're trying to see them clearly and eventually reject everything, reject all experiences. In other words, reject them as an object worthy of attachment. I mean, acceptance isn't terrible. I've talked about this before. It's just not quite accurate. It feels somewhat like acceptance, but it's more just, and importantly, it's not quite acceptance. It's importantly rejection. No, this is not worth clinging to. It's not worth anything. It's something to be experienced. There's no shortcut. A list isn't going to help you. It's not like you could sit and meditate and refer to the list every time something arose. You have to learn to recognize what you're experiencing. Often the confusing ones are a lot simpler than we think. The confusing ones are often just either feeling or knowing, some kind of awareness. You're aware of something. They're confusing because the details are different, right? This one is different. This experience is different from that experience, but they're only different in terms of the details. The same as if you see a cat or a dog. Those different experiences? No, not meaningfully different. You see a cat, you see a dog, everyone would say, yes, those are two different experiences. They're very different. They're not different. They're not different in terms of what's important for the cultivation of mindfulness. In order to see the three characteristics, all you have to know and all you should know is that that is seeing, which is why we say to ourselves, seeing. So you're not involved and invested in cat or dog and whatever that means. It's just seeing. So in the same way as that, a lot of the strange feelings, for example, that you might have, hard to note. How do we note this? But they're actually quite easy to note because they're all just feeling. You can just say feeling, feeling. If you're aware of something, some kind of strange awareness, still just knowing, or aware, whatever. Knowing is probably the simplest word. Knowing and feeling do a lot of work for things that you're not sure what they are. Because the rest are pretty obvious. Like if it's painful, you recognize it as pain. If you're angry or if you're craving something, it's pretty clear to what those are. If you're worried, hard to mistake worry as anything but worry. But we're not in the beginning very well able to identify them. So it is a skill to be able to identify and recognize things.
Bante, the next question is, when I use words silently to note, I note too often. Can I return to focus without using words at all?
Well, you can do what you want, but you're asking, could you practice our way doing it that? The answer is no, of course. You do it the way we explain it. So delving into this, I mean, this is, of course, a variation of a question that we get asked quite often. But first, let's deal with the first part. You say you're noting too often. Well, don't note so often, I guess. But if you find yourself jumping from one thing to another, you're missing the fact that you're distracted, and you should therefore note distracted. But you should note about once per second. I mean, you shouldn't count that, but it's a good guide. If I say once per second, you just understand it's just note at a casual rate. Because the word, it's not like you get points each time you say the word or something like that. You get benefit when the noting clearly focuses your attention just on the experience as it is. That's where the benefit comes from. But without noting, it's not certain that that's going to happen. In fact, it's more likely that you're going to You're going to proliferate. You're going to extrapolate on the experience. There's three qualities that you can't cut just by observing an object. The first is ditthi, views. If you have any views about the object, they won't be cut. Mana, conceit. This is mine, this is good, this is, or I am good, I am bad, that sort of thing. And tanha, craving, any liking or disliking will not be broken. You can't cut those simply by observing. This is why tirasanya is this using the word. It's the augmenting of sanya. Tirasanya is the proximate cause of sati, mindfulness. Mindfulness only arises with tirasanya. It's not just sanya. Sanya is when you recognize something. That's what you're talking about. You observe something, you recognize it. This is seeing, this is hearing. You recognize that. You're aware of the experience. Recognizing it isn't enough. You have to strengthen that so that you're only recognizing it. Seeing is only seeing. To do that, you need some samatthana, you need some activity. And this is the activity, which is a very standard meditation technique. You have a mantra. Just that this mantra is focused on, or is a name for actual experience, so it's actually real. But it has the same result of focusing your attention and fixating your attention on the object itself specifically. And it does have the power to cut through ditthi, views, mana, conceit, and tanha, craving.
Amir, did you have a question you wanted to ask?
Yeah, may I? Bante, can you talk a bit about conceit? I was listening to I think it was the board meeting from a few days ago, and I think you said that not doing what one's been told to do is a form of conceit, and I feel like that left me a bit confused.
You'll have to remind me of the context.
I was listening to different parts of the board meeting, and in the notes for YouTube, you can sort of there were topics and links to the different topics discussed in the meeting, and so just listening to various things you talked about. One of which was conceit, um, and I suppose that's sort of the only context I have. And the reason I asked the question is because maybe I thought of questioning what is once being asked to do. Could it be a form of simply using some wisdom? um, I suppose, like the Buddha said, come see for yourself. He didn't blindly, I suppose, ask us to agree with anything he said, from what I understand. And so if I'm questioning something, let's say, that has to do with the meditation or something in daily life, I don't know when that would be conceit or when that would be sort of wise judgment.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to give me the exact words and the exact context, because obviously it's not always conceit, but a person with conceit won't be aware that they're conceited, but certainly conceit is a huge reason why people don't agree to just do what they're told. So one example I guess I can think of is when we tell meditators to practice a certain way. Like if we say, you're not talking about the board meeting, you're talking about the AGM, I think, right?
Oh,
Our
that's
board
right.
meetings aren't on YouTube, are they?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, the general meeting.
I don't
That's
think our
right.
board meetings should be public. I don't think that's quite proper, but yeah, the AGM, I do remember now talking about how we tell meditators to walk with the right foot. Yeah, I mean, I think I was quite clear, actually. I was quite explicit in describing it. You have to be a little more specific about what you're concerned with, but talking about, I think I was clear that things like conceit are an obvious cause when the reason for doing, or the thing that you're being asked to do has no ethical consequences. If I say, walk with your right foot first, questioning that has absolutely no rationale besides something like conceit. Because if I tell you to walk, well, I mean, unless it's suppose you have an injury that makes it impossible to do things a certain way, and I'm pretty sure I must have mentioned that as well. But apart from some sort of injury, if we tell you to do it this way, and there's no ethical consequences, it's just an arbitrary way of doing things,
Right.
and you do it that way. And if you don't, it's a good way to ferret out people who have conceit, because the people with conceit will be the first to tell you, oh no, I do it with the left foot first, or I do
Okay.
it this way, or
Yeah.
absolutely, the people with conceit will be the first to need to do it a different way.
Okay. And what about just daily life, work and parenting and, dealing with the child's school, things like that, where I find myself questioning what's happening. I would imagine that is not conceit, is it?
Now, questioning itself is not conceit. Questioning is more often doubt. Doubt is another hindrance.
The next question. Is it possible to be mindful while doing something quickly, for instance, while exercising, or even while driving or at work?
Yes. Yes, you don't always have to note everything. Again, it's once per second is a good rule of thumb. And again, that's not something you should take literally, but basically once per second. So for example, if you're running, you can just say to yourself, running, running, running. You don't have to note every movement, every foot movement necessarily. It is better if you don't do things quickly. It is better if you don't have to not do things quickly. It's more, it's not even so much that you should slow down. It's just that you should let it happen at the rate that it's going to happen. Doing things quickly is not always, but quite often there's an impulsion because of greed, because of anger, because of worry, that sort of thing. And so you should try to just let things happen at the speed that they're going to happen. You shouldn't be consciously, well, you can consciously slow down. It is actually recommended to consciously slow down, but it's not ultimately the way to do things. Like an arahant, that's like the way to become enlightened has nothing to do with slowing down. But how do I put this? Intrinsically, slowing down isn't value, but extrinsically, practically speaking, consciously slowing down is going to be a good practical way of guiding you towards how you should be behaving. But it's not the slowing down itself. It's just slowing down gives you a better perspective, allows you to actually do the work. But slowing down isn't the work, isn't intrinsically the path. What I mean, so yes, slow down, practically do things a little bit slower, a lot slower if you want. There's no problem behind that. But don't mistake that for the actual practice. Eventually, what you want is to just watch your body. Like seeing non-self, one of the three pillars, only comes when you just let it happen by itself. When you start to learn to watch the foot moving rather than, guiding it through the process, like thinking that I'm the one walking. This is delusion. This isn't what's really happening. Let yourself see. Mind instigating, the foot doing the walking, that there's parts and that they arise and they cease. It's a process. Let yourself see it happening. And so then it just happens at whatever speed it's going to happen. It's usually much slower than we normally do things when we're unmindful. But it doesn't really have to be consciously slow. It's not consciously slowing down. It's not the act of saying, I'm going to do this slowly. It's the act of being mindful as it happens.
Bante, the next question, which came up during our reading, so it's related to that. The person asks, so clinging to anything, even happiness and calmness, not just fear, anxiety, is still suffering? Can we be happy and not cling to it? I assume that happiness is as impermanent as everything else.
Yes, so clinging, the only thing wrong with what you're saying is that clinging is not suffering. Or, I mean, the answer to your question, no, clinging is not suffering. And it's kind of based on you're not fitting all the pieces correctly. Craving, clinging, these are the cause of suffering. But when you hold on to happy feelings, you're not suffering. I mean, it's not painful to do that, right? But it's the cause of suffering. If you were to experience the happiness without, no problem. Yes, you can experience happiness without craving, without attachment. It comes and it goes. Happiness is never a problem. It's actually usually a good sign. It's a sign that you're a good person, that you're on a good path. Happiness is. But the greed is a bad sign. It's a bad thing. It's a sign you're on a bad path. So when you like the happiness, when you crave it, it's the cause of suffering because that's what causes disappointment when the happiness goes. That's what makes you have to maintain that happiness at all costs, have to seek out, have to experience that happy feeling in order to not get upset, in order to not suffer. So you're addicted, right? Craving leads to clinging. Clinging is addiction, so it leads to suffering when you can't have the thing you're addicted to.
The next question is, Hiri and Ottappa remind me of the silas, virtues. Do they serve similar purposes?
Ahiri and Ottappa would allow a person to keep sila. If a person doesn't have hiri Ottappa, it's very unlikely that they're going to reliably keep any sort of sila, any sort of morality or ethics. They might because they're told to, they're taught to. They might do it as a cultural norm. In Buddhist cultures, some of these things are normal, and not in non-Buddhist cultures as well. Some people just they're just taught not to kill insects, or of course not to kill human beings. We're just taught not to. But we also generally have some sense of hiri and ottappa, so we recoil from the idea. If you've never been in a position to kill, you might not realize how much innate hiri and ottappa we have. But when you get in a position to have to kill a large being or a human, it's much more difficult than you think. I've never killed a human being before, but when you get in a position where you have to kill, it's surprising how difficult it can be for someone who's not accustomed to it. Of course, farmers, as they get As they kill more and more, and it degrades their mind more and more, then it becomes very simple for them, very easy for them, because they lose their hiri and ottappa. But for those people who are not in the habit of killing, they have some very strong innate hiri ottappa that's not intellectual. You don't realize it until you're in the position. You just it's hard to actually do evil deeds at first.
The next question is related to that, Bhante, and they ask, speaking about hiri and ottappa, when do they become unwholesome? I think worry and guilt are unwholesome. So could you clarify how to identify what to note?
If you're worried or guilty, you just say worried, or guilt. You could just note guilty, but you can also note disliking. It's more accurate, perhaps. Guilt is a disliking of the thing that you're remembering. Maybe a disliking of yourself, I guess, as well. But there's disliking and guilt, definitely.
The next question, Bhante. Would you say seeing impermanence happens only when you see something ceases, or also when something changes in its intensity?
Oh, it can also be because something arises. Something arises that you weren't expecting that helps you see impermanent. When, for example, suppose you're watching the stomach and it's going smoothly, slowly, and then suddenly it speeds up. That's a classic example of impermanent. It can actually be a catalyst for cessation. Anything strange, sometimes meditators have strange experiences. And they'll fixate on the experience and want to know, what was that? My teacher would always sort of kind of disappoint them by saying it was impermanent or it was a sign of impermanence. I mean, he would actually say it in an inspiring way. He would say, "Did it seem strange?" And they say, "Yes, it was so strange." There you go. That's you seeing impermanence. But it completely shuts down the importance of the thing that you were seeing, because it's not important. That's just details. But strange is a sign of impermanence. It's sort of a expanding of your horizons, because we expect things to be a certain way. As you start to more and more experience things that resonate with you as strange, you start to become less reactionary, less expectant. You realize you don't know what's going to come next. You're less sure of the way things are going to be. And so you realize, unpredictable. It helps you to let go of expectations and of things, because you know they could disappear at any time, or something new could come at any time.
Yes, sorry, I was muted. The next question is, you said that to meditate, it is useful to be aware of the benefits. Which benefits would you emphasize in particular? Which ones to keep in the heart, especially as beginners?
Did I really say that? All these things people say I said. It's hard because maybe I misspeak or say things out of context or say things in context. Is it useful to know the benefits? I mean, obviously, without knowing the benefits, why would anyone meditate? But the reason I hesitate and worry and have concern about this line of thinking, and why I'm not sure I actually said it quite as emphatically as as directly as you put it, is because focusing on the benefits is not very useful at all. Is harmful generally. Yes, I stand by that. Focusing on the benefits, knowing them, sure. Having them to remember, why am I doing this again? Sure, maybe. It's not great. And it's a real trick because it doesn't sound right. What I'm saying sounds wrong. What? How can you not rely on benefits? You say, which ones to keep in the heart? The idea is that somehow by keeping the benefits in the heart, it propels your practice forward. It allows you for better progress. But it doesn't, is the problem. For beginners, could I allow that? Does a beginner benefit from keeping the benefits in their heart? No, not really. Yeah, they benefit from knowing them. They even slightly benefit from recalling them every so often. But even a beginner has to focus on the quality. I mean, I guess what you better to say is that a beginner will often question what they're getting out of the practice. Will often reflect on how they benefited from the practice. And so will be always fixated, will be often fixated on the benefits. What are they getting out of it? But an advanced meditator stops that. Or it's gradually, step by step, stops doing that. And they'll find, you'll find yourself, peaking. Am I getting something? But it doesn't help you. It doesn't benefit you to do that. And so the reason I haven't actually explained the reason, but getting to the reason of why this is because benefits are future, or benefits are conceptual. They're who I am now. So they are related to conceit. Think, hey, I'm better than I was before, right? So one way of benefits is here and now. Am I benefiting? Am I better? It's conceit. It's not helpful. It's not beneficial. Or what am I going to get out of this? Oh boy, I hope I get this out of it. Or I'm excited to practice because that's future. Okay? But either way, there's no great benefit. There's no great benefit in focusing on the benefit. It's tricky. It sounds strange. It sounds kind of absurd. It's a novel approach to initiative, to inclination. Why else would you be inclined to do something than what you get out of it? The answer is simple. The nature of what you do. Why you do and how to keep yourself doing what you do is to appreciate the nature of it. It's unique. It's a novel approach because it's in the present moment, and we're not used to living in the present moment. But you can and should gain encouragement and initiative and inclination to practice from the nature of the practice itself. You see that mindfulness not brings you good things, but mindfulness is a good thing. You see that mindfulness is the best state of mind possible, best arisen state of mind, the best way of experiencing things possible, the best way of interacting with the world. You see that it's preferable to letting your mind cling and grasp and extrapolate and make more out of things than they actually are. And that is where you should focus your attention. Focus your effort on seeing that, seeing how good it is to be mindful and appreciating how good it is. And that will give you all the encouragement you need. And it's much purer than worrying about what am I going to get out of this? What is it going to do for me? There is, we can talk for hours about all the benefits that you get. We have on our website a list of, I think, I translated this list from Thai of 30 benefits or 40 benefits, or in the end, I think he just says an incountable benefit. Knowing them is great, and they can be a great reason for someone to pick up meditation. But ultimately, the most important benefit, the most accurate and real and valuable benefit is the quality of your mind when you're mindful.
Bhante, here's another question about Hiri or Uttapa, so you may or may not want to skip it. I'm not sure if you have answered it. And the question is there another word for shame, or could it be a mistranslation? In my understanding, it is not far from regret. I mean, how come shame is wholesome and regret is unwholesome?
Yeah, I answered this one already.
All right, then the next question. People sometimes say I'm negative. I see a lot of suffering. Should I be positive still?
You shouldn't be negative or positive. You should be realistic, but pessimistic, optimistic, realistic. Realistic is probably a better word than those two. So, I mean, I guess you can be to some degree, you can be all three. You should be able to see the negative of those things that are negative. You shouldn't sugarcoat negative things and pretend they're good. And you should be optimistic in the limited sense of seeing the good in things and seeing the good in people. The Buddha said we should be optimistic about people. Even if they have bad side, we should discard that. We should, in a sense, be pessimistic towards all things. But it's not really pessimistic. You shouldn't be pessimistic or optimistic. But I think of the two, there is a practical sense that you should be optimistic, especially, as I said, in regards to people. The Buddha said, towards people especially, try to be optimistic. It's not really optimistic, because the problem with optimism, of course, is optimism, I guess, essentially involves seeing bad things in a good light, and or hoping without reason that things are going to be good. So suppose you have a thing that's going to happen, and it could be good or it could be bad. Optimism is saying it's going to be good, or having some cultivating a belief that it's going to be good. Right? That's optimism, which isn't useful, not valuable. Because then, of course, if it's bad, then you're disappointed. And there's this book, very old book, Pollyanna, and I think the girl in there was an optimist, and it presents the idea that she could change the world by being optimistic. I think eventually she becomes very pessimistic, and then there's this whole deal, and it's kind of an interesting study of this idea of optimism. And of course, it's just a story, so it's not necessarily indicative of reality. It's just someone's idea of, I think, flawed idea of how reality actually works. But some people do swear by optimism. And there is a sense in which if you don't focus on the evil, you never really suffer from it. So there is some way in which Buddhism agrees with this, practically speaking, in the sense that you shouldn't let the bad drag you down. Being focused on the good. If by optimism one means focused on the good that does exist, so the good of something that is true and real, then that's good. But to just color something that is perhaps bad or neutral as good, if it's not really good, that's obviously delusion. I mean, it's obviously not in line with the Buddha's teaching. But if optimism means focusing on the good, generally a good idea. Don't worry so much about the bad. Don't get obsessed with it. Focus on what's good. It's like a seed. If you have a good, it's even if it's not bearing fruit, it's a seed. And if you focus on it and you just don't get disturbed by everything else, it can grow. Doesn't mean you should ignore the bad, I suppose. You do still have to be aware of the bad. So the best way, of course, is to be a realist and realistic and know the bad is bad and the good is good. Anytime you find yourself pessimistic or optimistic, you should probably recognize that you're coloring things with colors that they don't have.
We've almost hit the hour, so I think, only ask this one more question, Bhante. And the person is asking, how does one cultivate the proper timing when exercising right speech?
Well, right speech is most importantly the absence of wrong speech. It's an important pattern that you see in the Buddhist teaching. The focus is on not having wrong action, wrong speech, wrong livelihood. If you don't have the wrong, then you're right. Because obviously, if right speech was the speech, then to have it, you'd have to always be talking, which is, of course, not reasonable and not rational. So it then becomes a sense of if and when you're going to talk, make sure that it's not wrong speech. Proper timing. Where's proper timing? Oh, there's different levels to that. Of course, you can intellectually consider. I mean, even just asking yourself, is this the right time to say something? Obviously, that's a good thing. That's not meaningless, not harmful. It's a good practice to get into. If you want to say something, ask yourself, is this the right time to say it? One of the factors, is it the right time to say it? Is it true what I'm going to say? And is it beneficial? It should always be true, beneficial, and at the right time. If it's not true, not beneficial, and not the right time, or if it's lacking any one of those three, then you shouldn't say it. So cultivate the proper timing, because the other level is mindfulness. If you're mindful, really mindful, of course, you can't possibly speak wrong speech. Your timing will never be off. I mean, you will never say something rushed or oblivious to what's going on around you, oblivious to the circumstances in which you're going to speak, that sort of thing. So your timing is much better through mindfulness. And of course, you couldn't say anything false or unbeneficial. So the best way to have right speech is, of course, with right mindfulness.
Okay, thank you, Bante. This was the last question we prepared for you for today.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for asking the questions. As always, it's an honor and a privilege to be able to share the Dhamma, to be someone who you think to some extent is able to give answers that are valuable and helpful to you. Much appreciation to Delawar, Sibitsu, everybody else, all the board members, and all the participants in our Dhamma group, people who have taken up the task of reading the text for us. And of course, all the behind the scenes volunteers who make the organization run and allow us to have this broadcast, this session every week. Much appreciation to everyone who joined. We have people on YouTube, people here in Discord. Even my mother was here in the beginning. Much appreciation for everyone coming out. I hope there was much that you could gain from this. Of course, I don't doubt that everyone gained something. Just coming here is undoubtedly a good thing. There is always some good, even if you were distracted or tabbing into other tabs or clicking on other websites or something. Maybe some of you were doing other things, multitasking. It's best not to, of course, if you can have the patience and focus to just be present for this session. That's the best, but it's difficult. Difficult for people who haven't deeply gotten into the practice of mindfulness. So it's a work in progress. And just having the intention to be here, why else would you be here? Unless you're here to criticize and judge and have all sorts of bad intentions. It's hard to believe that you don't benefit. Obviously, we're benefiting from this, right? But it's sometimes we don't realize how much we benefit just by being here. Important to acknowledge and recognize that just spending this time just being here has made us better people. Isn't that a good thing? Isn't that great? So much appreciation and acknowledgement of the goodness and the good in all of you. All of this goodness and all of the power of the goodness that I have performed by giving answers and sharing the Dhamma, for everyone else who shares the Dhamma on these occasions. The power of all the good deeds that you've done on this occasion and throughout your life, and all the good deeds that you've done in past lives that have allowed you to be born in such a auspicious birth as a human being in the time of the Buddha Sasana, with a sound body and a sound mind, able to listen to the Dhamma and appreciate the Dhamma. Along with the power of the Buddha, the power of the Dhamma, the power of the Sangha, may all this greatness and power protect you and facilitate for you a long, healthy, happy life with the strength to face whatever difficulties and challenges come your way. May you go on to happiness and happy places in whatever life you're reborn into. May your minds be dedicated to the cultivation of good, the abstention from evil, and the purification of the mind. And may you all in this life or in some life to come find true peace, happiness, and freedom from suffering and nibbana through the path and fruition. Sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.